the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I'm glad to see Michelle made it on time. That's great. Comments and statements from the public. Does anybody want to get up and say anything? Okay, so just get in line. I know. Is Daniel Marks here today? Daniel is not coming today.
He's not coming.
He's a very busy man, Mr. Westport. Student enrollment update. Dr. Colley, you doing that?
Mm-hmm.
As you can see, we're still bouncing between the high 90s and the low 90s, except for, well, even ninth grade is now at 90% attendance rates. So I think for the year we'll be fine. We're just a little under 1,700 students. So if you have any questions, the one thing I do want to point out is, as the year has gone on, I think we started at 23% of free and reduced lunch. We've gone up a couple of notches to about 25%. So I do encourage any families that are out there listening to us, whether you think you need it or not, it's always a good idea to put it in because you may qualify. And it'll help you, and it'll be actually for us as well. We'll be able to help them a little bit more because we can target some assistance to those families.
And yeah, usually, I mean, a lot of times parents, if they're thinking about that, it's worth at least exploring that option. Medical emergency response plan drill. Dr. Colley.
Pull this a little closer. We do have several drills we perform every year. This year we added a new set of drills, which basically it involves what happens when there is a medical emergency in the schools. So we met with the Health Advisory Committee, and we set it up, and about a couple of weeks ago we ran the drill school to school. We only actually activated the EMS service for 2 of the schools because 2 of the schools have already in this school year, have had several medical emergencies, so we know more or less the timing response of the EMS. They know the schools because they've been in here. Now we wanted to still do the drill for the high school and the middle school, but we didn't activate the EMS service. For the elementary and the MAC, we actually went through the whole system of calling 911. We did tell them it was a drill, and then they dispatched the ambulance. It's interesting because that day, as we were getting closer and closer to actually running the drill, we found out that the ambulances were not even in town. And sometimes that happens. One was running somebody to one hospital, one was running somebody else to another hospital, but we were able to get them back here in a very short period of time. So we ran the drill, gives the EMS people a chance to test out their response as well. And just wanted people to know that we do run those drills just as much as we run the ones that are safety and security drills, such as the lockdown.
Anyone from the committee have any questions? Okay, thank you, Dr. Colley. Next on the agenda, sports equipment uniform replacement cycle. Come on up, gentlemen. Introduce.
I just wanted to introduce said went to Matt Camper. He's the athletic director at the middle school, also phys ed instructor. Do you want to ask specific questions, or do you just want to review some of the things that?
No, go ahead and, go over your.
If you look at the uniform purchasing page, where it talks about the different school years, after looking at the uniforms that we have for the season, and each season Matt looked at what we had, what we needed, and Dr. Colley asked us to come up with a projected, a rotation of how it would be to replace some of these. If you look at this school year, we are looking to purchase new soccer uniforms, so they'll have them for the beginning of next school year. The boys and girls basketball, softball pants and jerseys. We were looking at purchasing them this year for next school year. And baseball is just pants only. The baseball jerseys we both looked at, and when they were purchased probably, I'm thinking 8 years ago, whoever purchased them purchased amazing jerseys, and they are still in very, very good condition. So I just don't want to spend money to spend money. I don't think it's right. So we would just be getting pants for that. Next school year, we have softball now twice. Do we? Yeah, sorry. Next school year, we wouldn't be looking at any replacement of anything per se. The 15-16 school year, we would look at new field hockey, the jerseys, and getting them the sports that they wear. And then possibly looking at the baseball jerseys, and probably at that point just buying jerseys because we bought pants 2 years prior. The 16-17 school year, we would look into the cheerleading, the uniform skirts and pom-poms and whatnot. And the estimated costs are there with you.
I would say that's all pending too. If they're in good shape, there's no need to purchase new ones. Like the baseball, we've had for 8 years. They're in great shape, they look good, so we don't need new ones. Cheerleading is 2 years old, so 3 years down the line they're still in good shape and we have them. We don't need to purchase new ones. Just kind of as wear and tear goes on, and as we need new stuff, we can purchase it.
Matt, thanks for coming. The item that brought this to my attention, it was probably a month ago, maybe a little further back, was the picture of the girls' softball team in the shorelines.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
I don't know if that's in here.
I'm not sure which picture that was. I didn't see.
It was the basketball, girls' basketball.
Oh, the girls' basketball.
Basketball.
Yeah.
Okay, basketball.
And by looking at that picture, it was clear that some of the uniforms were just, different dates and numbers with different sizes. And
both Matt and I looked at the boys and girls basketball teams. He was at every single home game, and we both did look at them, and we both agreed we have to buy new uniforms. We actually have a prototype in my office on what they would look like. There you go.
Yeah, okay.
sure, you could pass it around.
It's that top one.
Michael?
We have a quote for and everything. The basketball, we look like practice jerseys, pretty much. So we thought, it would be good to get some new ones.
I mean,
they weren't terrible, but it's just, if we can upgrade, we should upgrade.
I mean, the budget's, obviously, the budget is tight, and the argument can be made that, we spend money here, but we don't have money to spend here. I mean, there is the athletic revolving account that was kind of set up to help with those things, and parents do pay, and it's not unfair that a parent expect that their child get a decent uniform. Doesn't mean we're going to be offering new uniforms every year.
Yeah.
But, so I don't want, I want you guys to be able to feel comfortable saying, hey, we need uniforms. We have that, we have that fund that was set up for those reasons. You shouldn't feel bad about spending, $500, whatever it is, to buy uniforms to make our kids look good.
Yeah.
They play great. Let's make them look great.
Yeah, similar to the direction Tony's going, we're looking at our revolving accounts and we see we have balances, and we see that we don't have, we're asking you to really review the cycle you have here and maybe make some adjustments. Sometimes you need to, and now let me give you my input. So that was my reaction to, we have some money, if there's some needs, maybe we want to tweak that. But now I can give you the longer story. My daughter played softball and field hockey, so I learned about the softball uniforms, and I remember the cool spring days. So if, long sleeve Under Armour or some type shirts don't come with the uniform, make sure that, they know they should get some, because it's going to be cold out there.
Yeah.
But other than that, they look like they're having a great time. There were some action shots in here as well.
This is actually one of the jerseys. It's just one that no girl is using this year, but I do believe someone used it last year. So I don't know if you guys want to look at it. That's, shown in those pictures.
Michelle?
Did you just put this into place, this rotation for, you just put this into
Yeah,
place,
we just
correct?
came up with that.
We just did that
So-
probably, yeah.
So you didn't have a rotation previously. So now that we have a rotation cycle, we'll be able to keep up to date on all of our uniforms and make sure that they are where they should be. I actually asked Alec to bring one of these because I knew what they looked like because my daughter played field hockey. They're actually in great shape, and it was brought to our attention that they were using, the softball girls were using what was thought to be field hockey uniforms when they're sort of generic in the respect that there's no sticks on them, doesn't say softball or field hockey on them. So I do know they're in good shape. Other sports teams do provide their own Under Armour. I have a question on the pants. I've heard two things now, because you said you're adding pants into the rotation, but I'm told that the students are supplying their own pants.
This year they're supplying their own, so we looked into if we could supply them for them.
Are
We have an
they,
estimated cost.
what do we do up here? Do we know?
I
They're
have,
part of the uniform.
yeah,
Typical
I have,
high
yes,
school
they are.
logo, part of the uniform.
But so those, and I'm not a baseball, my son plays baseball, but I am not a baseball mom. I don't know how they withstand the,
With baseball, we had old striped pants. So the coach left that for the kids. He said, you want to use these striped pants as your uniform pants, or do you want to go out and buy white pants? And I guess as a group, they decided to buy white pants to go with the uniform. So, I mean, we have pants. They are old. They are kind of outdated. Some have holes in them. So we're looking at maybe buying new pants for next year for softball at least, and maybe baseball. So
how
we could
many,
provide pants.
I have one more question. How many kids play baseball?
15.
So you have
And
15
on
for,
softball.
because I did ask you the numbers too, just so that people are aware. I understand the students are paying money. I'm a paying parent of a child that plays a sport as well. When you add in all the fees that it costs, the busing and all of that stuff, we're really only $700 extra, and that's not paying your salary, and that's also not paying for first aid equipment or anything else that you might need, which is quite expensive as well down there. So I just don't want people to think that we have all of this extra money from those fees, which we're dropping next year. I just want to make sure that people don't think that we're just taking all this extra money and banking it somewhere, because we're not.
The beginning of this season, Matt and I looked at the baseball uniforms and the softball uniforms with the thought of, geez, should we buy new ones? Shouldn't we buy new ones? And we looked at the baseball, and then we looked at those, and we said, they're in good condition. For us to go out and buy one, I think would not be a good use of our money. We could put it somewhere else and buy some of these other things that we might need.
I would say the most pressing need for uniforms is soccer. Kind of some are mismatched. Some say Westport. Some are just blue. Some have different numbers. So I'd say the most pressing need is soccer, and then basketball, and then softball and baseball in pretty good shape. Cheerleading's in good shape.
The fee structure, how did we come up with the fees that we charge the parents? Does it take into account, do we figure out all the costs for our sports and then, divide it by how many students, and then is there any method of coming up with the fee cost?
May I?
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
When we figured this out, the issue wasn't so much as to how much were we going to allocate per student. It was a vehicle over the last couple of years, as we've been required to basically cut our request out of the budget, how do we backfill that hole? Whether it be asking for more money from parents in order to pay people like the ADs or the coaches or the transportation, when we know that we're taking money out of the budget because we lost an override, and all of a sudden we still have to pay for staff salaries, special education requirements, and all that. So it was more, what's the number divided by an estimated amount of how many kids would be playing 1 year to the next, how much would increase in order to cover some of those costs, and back out how much money we basically had to come up with when we cut. So there wasn't a, you pay this amount and a part of that's going to go to the jerseys, a part of it's going to go to the coach, a part of it's going to go. It was more of a global, if we're going to have to cut $30,000, we need to come up with $30,000 worth of money to come back into the budget.
So you're looking at the fees paying for your time and effort, transportation, and the uniforms.
Umpires too.
Umpires. So it doesn't cover everything, because obviously we have money in the regular part of the budget, the operating part of the budget as well. So the fees, whichever way you want to look at it, either the fees supplement the budget or the budget supplements the fees. It's a mixture of the two that pays for the program. So the budgets as a whole have about $100,000 worth of funding built into the operating part of the budget, and the rest comes from the fees.
The final question is your time and effort also spent on phys ed? Did I hear that correct? You're also the phys ed instructor as well. Okay, thank you.
Caroline?
With regard to the fees, we also did a look at what other schools were charging. It wasn't done in a vacuum. It was sort of, we had a spreadsheet that said this school's charging this, this, this. And so we didn't want to be on the high end. We didn't want to be on the, it was sort of look at what everybody else is charging. It wasn't just come up with a number. There was some analysis and thought that went into. I don't believe his phys ed portion of his salary is not part of the athletic piece.
Okay,
that's
so
completely separate. So I want to make sure there's no confusion about that.
Thank you.
Michael?
Yeah, and I appreciate Dr. Colley reviewing back when we initiated the fees and, the first trying time we had 4 years ago. And I know last year we had a budget subcommittee hearing in the auditorium. We sat there and went over our financial picture and came up with answers. One thing that we spoke of was looking at your building budget, if you will. So I'd wonder, because I've always had issue with the way we receive the fees and then do the expenditures, but they don't follow the same organizational chart for the people that are in charge of it. We have an athletic director who is up at the high school, and you're our athletic program director, I believe is the title, right? And so do we know how much total revenue you bring in through that school through student fees?
I don't have it in front. I have it in my office written down. I don't have it in front of me.
And do you have a rough idea how much we spend? Because that's somewhat centralized. And this isn't a quiz. I didn't think you would know, because I see the flow, and I do have some issues with that. I'd like to see. I'm giving you homework for next year when you come back. So,
the NVT do a budget, how much we brought in, how much we spent.
Yeah, but the school, we don't see the separation on these revolving accounts, so we don't see what's going where, and so we'd like to see that, and so if you can, if you have that would be great. Bring it to Dr. Colley, and he'll see that I get a chance to look at it. Thank you.
Howard?
Any other questions?
Matt,
Any
anything
other
else?
concerns? Are you guys fine with
Hey, that's
what we're doing with the rotating of the uniforms, and fine with the softball?
You guys
using
know.
the field hockey uniforms and things like that?
Well, no, I think that the softball, if they can't afford Under Armour or some kind of undershirt, you ought to get a price on that, because the past few days have been cold, and I think back, when I used to be on the sidelines watching, I wasn't that involved, but it was.
You mean a long sleeve shirt, not a name brand shirt.
Yeah, well, whether it's Under Armour.
Some
said
with long sleeves.
under
you want
Emerald.
On the Emerald shirt.
It's half of them seem warmer because they have long sleeves. I don't really care what the brand is. No,
Any other, Michelle?
I want to
I
win,
just-
that's all.
I just have a comment. Anytime I have had a question on high school revolving account, middle school revolving account, Melissa Souza has all of that information broken down by sport, by season, by in, out, what the fees are for the umpires or whatever sport it might be. So that is easily accessible to all of us, so.
Thank you. Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Are we talking about the bottom one?
Dr. Colley,
Sorry.
budget update FY13.
All right. As you know, we did some transfers already this year, a couple of rounds of it. We will probably need at least one more round of transfers. And as part of the budget management for the schools every year, we try to track where we are on a month-to-month basis. But at certain times of the year, it becomes critical that we also try to identify where we are in terms of expenditures and then project all the way to the end of the year. We do that on a regular basis, but at this time of the year it becomes critical. We're actually back into looking at some of the budget lines for this year. I had made Melissa work on this for next week. However, it's one of the questions I'm going to have in terms of whether we're going to have a
Dr. Colley, is that something we have?
It's something that's been passed around because it was created in the last couple of days for some of the school committee members that participated in discussions, with, and I have extra copies that I brought in case anybody needs them. But I think most people have
we
seen
had
it.
last night at the FinCom?
Yeah. I have additional copies for the public. Yeah, it's just one sheet. Sorry, I didn't know how many I passed around. I know I made extras because we had another meeting today. So as we look at next year's budget, we also look at what is left over in our accounts for this year. And one of the questions that was asked of us was whether there was any money left over in the payroll accounts. Obviously, if you go through the expenditure reports that we provide to you on a monthly basis, there's a few minuses mainly generated by staff development and a few people who are out on leave. But on the whole, we know we have about $70,000 worth of payroll that is not allocated at this point. Some of that came from SPED and regular ed supervisor salaries that we did not implement this year, partly because we were trying to work with the teachers on a collaborative basis as to how to implement the new educator evaluation system. We were hoping to have that question answered. Could we use these people to provide feedback to them and help the principals? That hasn't happened yet. So the salary has rolled into the year. It hasn't been used, so it's there. We had one early retirement that we were expecting that when we did more research, we found out we would not have to pay out the early retirement account. We have some accreditation subs that we did not have to use this year. Thank the high school, they got the work done without additional help. And we've had quite a few people go out on maternity leaves or on long-term medical leaves that then when they run out of sick time, we pay subs, and the subs are less expensive than the staff being out. So that really has accounted for some of the additional money that you see left in the budget. I know some people tried to make a calculation of, based on the money we have sitting on our accounts, how much money we should have at the end of the year, and they came up with a much bigger number. So what I passed around is the breakdown of what we still expect to spend from this fiscal year all the way to September. Teachers have the ability to get paid over the summer for the work they have done this year. So what we do is at the end of the year, we encumbered a lot of summer pays to the tune of about, I want to make sure I get this the right number, $853,000. So some people look at that number and they think, ooh, it's been sitting there. I don't think you can spend it by the end of the year. But in fact, we do spend it. So it's one of those things that when we negotiate with the teachers, it's one of the benefits we provide to them is we'll pay you through the summer, and that way we spread your payout for 12 months instead of just 10 months. Although some teachers choose to take the last payment in June. We call it the lump sum. So it looks like we're carrying a lot of money into the end of the year, but it's not as much as people perhaps out there look at when they see our budgets up on the website. Other than that, my next job for her, myself, the staff in the office, the principals, and the department's heads, is to take a look at anything that has been encumbered, that hasn't been spent. We got 2 months left, so we're going to try to figure out in the expense lines, supplies, materials, phone, electric, utilities, how much of that are we really going to spend between now and June? And is there any savings there that we can use to either offset things we need this year, or how much perhaps we need to leave in the budget to go into free cash and send it back to the town? And that's a decision the school committee has. At this point, I don't have that number. Like I said, Melissa was shooting for the first May meeting, because when we close April, it'll give her a better read on how much money is really left. I know people wanted the numbers sooner, but we're only limited to how much we can do at one point in time. So right now, just looking at prior year expenses and how much we spent at the end of the year, she's coming in with about $6,000. It may be more, it may be less. We're tracking those numbers now, and I'll have those for you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, so I think more so as a result of our increasing the frequency of the review. We've been reviewing this almost quarterly now, and we've had, what, two periods of transfer?
2 transfers.
So, you know, we've monitored it so we stay within our budget, but make sure we don't come up short through the year, and that's been successful. I don't think $70,000 with 2.5 months left of school and the costs related to closing is, it's good that we covered our budget on that area. But it took some pain to do that. So I'd ask, besides, you know, if we're tracking 70, is there anyone lining up at the door who has been told no this year? Do we have some programs where perhaps we can be on track for the evaluation program versus having not reached the plateaus that many other communities have? So the 70 is good, but I think, you know, we need to spend it somewhere possibly, because we said a lot of no's when we went through our budget last year, and there's still plenty of time to have our students further educated.
There are some things that we have been looking at. I mean, we've discussed additional safety and security expenditures for the buildings. We've talked about, you know, it's sometimes a matter of what can you spend it on in this short period of time, because they would have to be one-time expenditures in the sense that many of the requests that we have said no to are people-based or payroll-based. And those requests, when they come, you either commit to funding a program that involves hiring people and keeping them year after year after year, or, you know, it's a short-term program. You have it now and then you do away with it, which sometimes it's short-sighted. I mean, I would like to be able to count on a recurrent source of funds for those type of programs. But we do look at, for example,
I
books.
guess we're going well beyond what I suggested. I talked about assessments, okay? We have enough time now where the model of student assessments is supposed to be in the schools. And we'll find out later it is not, according to your April 5th letter. The reason that we want these assessments in place, we as the mandate from the state as well.
We're talking about budget right now.
Right, we're talking about where we can, the budget
We'll get
includes
that. We'll get
those areas. It's line items within your budget that perhaps we can chase those areas.
Not
I mean,
sure.
we went into many different options, and you were starting to lose me, so I wanted to bring you back to the only thing I suggested is, besides safety, which you know I'm the advocate of spending X
Right.
for that,
Mhm.
should we be spending X to get back on speed for this assessment program that would then yield perhaps a student need that we could fill over the next 2 months? That's
Which assessment program are you referring to?
the one that comes up later, and when we refer to some of the schools haven't been able to get up to speed on the assessment piece.
Are you talking about the?
Well, the evaluations are based on these assessments that aren't there.
Oh, you're talking about the district-determined measures for.
If that's the
Do
one
it-
we've chosen, because you have some flexibility on where you can go.
We're way off
Right?
base here. Okay.
No, I can answer that. The issue is not that. The issue is the guidance from the state is just now beginning to trickle down to our level. And so it's not that we didn't want to go into that at this point, is that until the guidance comes from the state, you don't want to be running into
Have you
creating.
taken advantage of any of the training that's out there, the vendors that are out there?
Actually, we have. We're
So-
taking workshops
Sure.
as we speak. I've done 2. There's a series of, I think, 6 of them. And to be honest, a lot of the vendors that are putting together those assessments, we are looking at them as potentials for providing these assessments in the future. But again, until the state finishes their work and tells us which direction to go in, it's hard to just go and hire a vendor to give us something that's not yet approved by the
So
state.
I would
Well,
ask
the-
the other members if quickly take a minute if anyone wants to throw in any suggestions on the direction we go with this potential savings. Melissa, let's start.
Is there a way of looking at some of our expenses this is kind of getting into, it's kind of a fine line between FY
Mhm.
14 budget discussions and FY 13, but is there a way of looking at some of those expenses that, we have in next year's budget and potentially purchasing some of them now, the larger ones?
I think there's a limited amount of that. One of the things we did this year with some of our transfers has been to take care of some of those one-time needs. Like I said, we're still looking at some books purchases, perhaps. So we're doing similar to what we did with the, putting in the cycle of renewal for the sports programs, doing the same thing with books. Books are a lot more expensive. They, a good program that carries you K through 8, maybe as much as $100,000 for a program that has books, online support, materials for teachers to use, consumables, and then assessments. So we have been looking at some of those, and the 70 may cover part of it, and if we have any money left in the expense accounts, we may be able to cover maybe a broader amount of them. But you're talking social studies, science, math, ELA, art, music, PE. So there are some of those that we would be able to perhaps target these monies to.
Michelle, Carolina?
Yeah, so as you know, when we were at the FinCom meeting last night, and there were discussions with regard to the school budget because our requests were bigger than the numbers that were put in the actual budget that they were reviewing. We had a meeting today where It was the superintendent, the Tony Vieira, the chair of the Board of Selectmen. I was there. John Miller was there from the Finance Committee, and Jack Healy, the town administrator, was there. And we talked about the town meeting and the budget, and threw some things around which I told them that I would bring back to this board. So
Hold on, we'll get to that, yeah. That's on the agenda a little further down. You wanna-
but it has to do with regards to the,
The time's up that you said. You said 1 minute.
Michael?
You said 1 minute. You
I'm-
skipped over there and it's
I'm
been
counting
3.
very
So just
slowly.
don't say that anymore, please. I take it as
Carolina,
offense.
go ahead. Caroline.
It's under action.
You tell me a minute, I'm gonna speak.
you know what, I'll defer my conversation
Thank
to
you.
the next.
Michael, you want a minute?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate the
Time.
suggestion I've had before. You said 1
It's a
minute.
joke.
That the school security investment is something we should be doing out of this year's budget to some degree.
There does exist a list out there, right? I mean, that's still out there.
A list of the
List
things
of-
that we deferred to other years.
$1.6 million
Yeah.
list.
Again, the problem with many of the items on that list, as Mike pointed out, that we said no to, many of them are payroll, staff, program driven, and we can fund it with these monies from now till June, but in June that money closes and we can't carry it year to year. So for example, when I look at the $70,000, there may be a little bit of money if we don't, depending on if we ever can agree to how the supervisors are used, there may be a little bit of money left over in that for next year. But if we use the supervisors, that will be gone. The early retirement, I have at least one person that will be accessing that next year. That will be gone next year. The accreditation subs, the middle school will be doing accreditation next year. That should be gone. Looking at sped clerks and maternities in terms of substitutes and versus people going out on leave, I don't have a crystal ball for next year. So we may not have that savings. So again, these are things that if it was something we could buy between now and June and put into play so that it reduces needs further on, we could. But not the program payroll staff needs that people have been
Sure.
asking for.
Just quickly thinking back to the needs that we had talked about, I
Mhm.
would wonder, I actually agree with Michael, security we know is a top priority, and it's something that we don't have in our budget. Perhaps if there is something at the end and we can put some of that towards security that we've talked about, I personally like that option. I also think maybe we take another look at technology and see, we know we need more technology, we know we're not where we need to be. Maybe that's another spot where, and we know with the park assessments coming down the pipeline, we're still behind the 8 ball on that. Maybe that's another place, looking at upgrading our wireless capabilities in the schools, which we're gonna need to upgrade. Those would be places that I would think we're probably going to need to look in 2014. So maybe we start addressing some of that now, so it's not a budget issue next year.
Yeah.
Just a thought, thinking back what we had talked about.
And I just want to say, you've heard Mike talk about security measures. We may not have been talking much about it out here, but we have discussed it in executive. So there are things that we are looking at. Anyone else have anything else to share on
Well,
this?
I just want to make sure that that's clear. We're treating security now as a standard maintenance item. So we're not reacting to any situations. We just
No.
feel that
Update
it's
monitors,
become part of our
cameras, different,
system.
just to bring us up a little to the modern age. Okay. The budget subcommittee update, I guess we'll do that here. That's,
Great.
am I missing that on the agenda?
Budget Subcommittee did meet yesterday. We reviewed the current operating budget. We reviewed the scenario that communications from both the Town and Finance Committee put before us, and that's a potential imbalanced budget at town meeting. So we met with the superintendent, and we asked and discussed options and recommendations, and did not come to any conclusion.
Thank you. Melissa?
I agree with what Michael said. We reviewed the budget and knew we needed to meet with FinCom later on, so we...
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay. Dr. Colley, the FY14 House 1 budget proposal?
As you know, every year the governor proposes a budget, the House takes it, gives it a once-over, changes some things, adds things, takes out things. We're just reviewing the numbers a couple of days ago, and even with the amendments that have been filed, because those were due, I believe, the Friday before we left on vacation, I looked, and it doesn't change the picture for us. Chapter 70, I think, is around $40,000 this year, more than last year. And I think based on the updated number of students, we went down by $400. So that's the only change I see at this time in terms of how the state budget would affect the school portion. I know the town is a different story. I mean, over the last few years, the town has been hit hard with reductions. We're still waiting to hear on what the actual reductions, if any, would be out of the federal government for, the sequestration issues that they're having, and whether something happens before the beginning of next fiscal year. But again, guidance from the state and from the federal government has been perhaps a reduction on entitlement grants like Title I of about 5%. But I don't have any real numbers at this point.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Colley. Next on the agenda, anti-bullying presentation. We have some folks here who are going to introduce themselves.
If they don't, I will.
I'm Mary Jo Medeiros. I'm from the high school counseling office. I'm one of the school adjustment counselors.
And I'm Julia Marciati, I'm a special ed teacher also at the high school.
If you guys can pull the microphone right up to you guys. Yeah, pull. Go ahead.
How's that better?
Beautiful.
Sure. Okay. So, we had an anti-bullying presentation at the school the Friday before vacation, and from a close family friend that I had, she had done a presentation at Somerset High School, and then she'd been going around to different high schools, so I thought it would be a really nice idea for her to come here and collaborate. We had a lot of students here also doing senior projects related to either bullying or, social media. So we had the students collaborate all of the projects that they had done, and knowing that students listen to students and knowing that we have to address bullying in the curriculum in some manner, we had there was 5 students who presented to the entire student body.
I believe you have in your packet a copy of the PowerPoint, which was actually 3 different projects that we had the students merge into one. So we kind of had to do this, by discussing on the phone. I had gone to meet with Mrs. Ann Nassif, who's a school adjustment counselor. She's also the advisor for the Anti-Bullying Coalition at Somerset Berkeley Regional High School. So I went to see her to meet with the students, and then we let the students choose which aspects they wanted to focus on. And from their 3 enormous projects, which were all very professional, we created this one smaller one so that they could use it as a guideline when they presented to the students. So it was a very, I think, powerful message. One of the things that Somerset Berkeley students did was they were able to give us an example of a banner that they had created in their high school, and what they gave us was, a rolled up paper, and basically handed it to us, and, with a ribbon around it, and said, "This is your opportunity." And what we did with the banner was we asked the students to make a pledge to be more tolerant, to be more themselves and of others. So we do have that in the back for you. It's quite long. It's still a work in progress. We take it very seriously, so we asked the students, if you're not ready to sign it today, take school vacation to think about it. It'll be here for a week for you to sign it, and then we'll get it up and we'll put it on display, because we didn't want students to sign it lightly.
But
It was quite impressive.
I would have to say at least probably about 70% of each audience did come up and sign it immediately, which was really, and also teachers and other staff members also signed it. So it was a very, very positive presentation.
Got a lot of positive feedback from students too, and that always lets us know that we're hitting the mark when they're going out of their busy routine to
Mhm.
stop in the office and say that was really a cool thing. You know that means a lot to them. So we hope to do more collaboration either with other schools in the future, where we can showcase some of the work of our own students, but have them collaborating with some fine work that's done at other local high schools and kind of putting them together. So it's a great opportunity.
Do we, I know, Dr. Carr, I know in the past we've asked for those, the bullying, the form you fill out there,
The plans.
Pledge.
The pledge.
no, the
No.
incident,
Statistics.
incident.
The incident.
The incident
form,
report.
the investigation form.
Yeah,
Follow-up.
whatever we call it, but
Mhm.
bullying incident report form.
Mhm.
And I know, and obviously we track those, and, I
Mhm.
mean,
Yes.
it's been a while since we've asked for those numbers, but
Mhm.
maybe we could get those
Sure.
soon, next week.
Mrs. Antonelli would probably be able to give you that number. probably
Michelle?
off the top of
They're
her head.
kept in every school, so if you want that as
Sure.
Just to
a
see- yeah,
future
just-
data, we can give
yeah.
you that.
I know we've asked for it in the past.
See, other good guys, we have to check with the people that at the other end of the,
Go ahead,
the
Michelle.
problem.
Well, she's
You help avoid the problem versus.
just trying to be proactive. Yes.
Just some feedback for you guys.
Thank you.
I did have a couple of teenagers in my car
Mhm.
the day I think that you did this. And I am always one of those moms who listens to the conversation and zips my mouth so I can hear a lot of what's going on because they tend to chat in front of me. And I heard them talking about bystanders and bullying. So I think that a lot of them maybe didn't realize that that is sort of a form of bullying. So they were thinking about maybe issues or incidents that they didn't realize that either they were a part of or somebody else was a part of, or not realizing that it kind of counts. So kudos to this program because it did get kids who you would definitely not think were the typical whatever, maybe thinking about situations that they may have been in the past and how to prevent them or fix them.
Right, and
So-
that's very helpful for me because a lot of what I hear from the students when I am involved in a situation that kind of needs to be dissected or, kind of looked over, and we meet with the students, or even just for a mediation purpose, not necessarily bullying, but just a conflictual situation between peers, is that students often say, I knew it was bad, I just didn't know what to do. And
Mhm.
so I think the fact that having the students address this and giving them concrete things that they can do
Mhm.
in the moment, I'm glad that stuck.
Yeah, it did. So just some feedback for you.
Melissa?
I just wanted to say thank you for doing this for our students and actually for the community at large, because I think they learn it, and as adults, adults can be bullies too, so
Mhm.
they'll, bring that into society and into our community. Is any of this at a level that can be shared with some of our middle school or even elementary school students, so that early on they can already be thinking about even at a younger age?
Yes, and I do believe, I'm sure there's all sorts of stuff going on at the middle school, I just don't know it off the top of my head, but Sherry Michael and Sherry Teague, I know are, handle that component at the middle school level. We have talked about going down, because we have our students go down to the middle school for other reasons, to get them excited to come up to the high school, to talk about athletics and classes and teachers. And I do see that as a possibility, absolutely. In the past, we've done, I believe last year you received a copy of the video. We had made a MARC, Massachusetts Aggression Reduction Center video, and that was how we chose to kind of expose the issue and raise awareness last year. And this year it was a little something different, and I think that to say to the students here at Westport, okay, here's your Somerset Berkeley peers, and they're here to tell you with a show of hands, like they said, how many people have been in a situation and all the hands go up, and I think that was validating for the Somerset Berkeley kids, but they were also here to say, it's not just in Westport, it's in Somerset Berkeley, and we have this, coalition that we use to tackle the issue, and, and it's in other schools, and so it just kind of, I don't want to say normalize it, but they put out there that this is not unique, as much as you feel alone in a situation like that, it's everywhere. So
Michelle?
it's very powerful.
Actually, I had the same question as she did after my comment, is are we doing a program like this at the middle school? Because as a parent, I don't know of one down there, and I know there's an issue down there. From what I hear from students, I hear there's more of an issue down there than we have up here. Let me just say that. I know we have our 8th graders that came up here the other day to do, so, I mean, I would love to see some cooperation either with our high school guidance department and our students, because some of those students have siblings down there, when I quickly look at that list, and they look up to them. So maybe we collaborate high school, middle school, and do something together to address it down there, and also you guys with the guidance department. So my question was more Dr. Colley. I'd like to see us make sure that we're doing something down there.
Carolina?
I'd like to also see an actual project with regard to the social media piece. Every one of these kids walks around with an iPhone, an iPod. They're on Facebook, they're on Twitter, they're on Instagram.
Shannon Pavo was the student from Westport that covered that, and it was like the foils and tables of social media. It's a phenomenal project.
Because she actually, her senior project just focused on the social media, and she talked a lot about, I mean, she geared towards the seniors and talking about when you're applying to college, they're going to look at your Facebook page. When you apply for a job, they might look at your Facebook page. All the things that kids don't necessarily think about when they post things on the social media. But she had done, like, we only took the piece of her project focusing on cyberbullying and statistics that she had and different cases that she had related to cyberbullying, the Rutgers case and different cases. So that's what she had presented her when we did the anti-bullying, but her entire senior project was about 16 minutes long, and it's all across all of social media.
Yeah, because I also have kids in the middle school, and it's huge. They have no clue. They're posting things, they're saying things, they're hurting people, and they don't really recognize that what they're saying is hurtful until it comes back and somebody says, oh, I can't believe you said, and I'm like reading and stuff going, whoa. Pictures, they really,
it's in an instant that it can go
they
viral.
don't understand the ramifications of the weapon that they have in there, and that's what it is. It is a weapon that needs to be disarmed.
And I taught an after-school project action class with some of the freshman girls, and Shannon allowed me to use parts of her PowerPoint with them as well, just talking about, and it's a very interesting conversation to have with kids, because they're pretty open about what they see and what they do. They're not, because they're almost naive in a sense about what's going on. They don't really think about the big picture and the later what could happen, and who else is going to see what you had posted.
But I think, too, what to do with that information is something that these kids don't know. And I did have an incident with an Instagram bullying incident, actually. And these kids, A, don't realize that what they're doing is bullying, and B, the student that is the recipient doesn't, A, realize it's bullying, and they don't know what to do with it.
Right.
So because it's different, it's on their phone, it maybe wasn't at school, it was this or it was that, and it is very scary. It is, I think, bigger down there than anybody realizes, and I think some of it's the age, not us. It's just their, that age that's what they're doing. So I'd love to see a collaboration.
Well, it's an introduction to them having that technology with less supervision than what younger kids tend to.
The West Mac PTO earlier this year over the winter had someone, and
Yes,
don't ask me his name. The guy was awesome.
Yeah, it was a tough name to say.
It was geared towards parents. His presentation was geared towards the parents, and there was a good crowd. I mean, but
No, there wasn't.
There wasn't any way near
for a
enough
PTO
people.
thing, there was a
There was,
decent
what,
crowd.
maybe 20 people?
20 people. That's a good crowd. But it was too bad that because everyone that left that presentation was wow, this was so great. Everyone started talking about it the next day. You missed this great thing, and not that they have plans to do it again or not, but I mean, whether you guys could do something like that, there's certainly people out there that could do something. And
There are
You know,
some
I think we should be bringing
Yeah.
these people in to all the schools, you know, the appropriate people to the right,
Absolutely.
to the schools.
We did have family services.
Yeah.
Came in and did an assembly for the high school students. And some of the literature, it's literature that I put out for parent-teacher conferences. It's literature that I have available in the counseling office for the students. They came out, I think they had some grant money, and this was a program they were running, so it wasn't of any cost to us. And they came out and they did a, you know, a video thing, and it was all around, sexting and texting. And it really was an eye-opener.
Mhm.
And but it gave the students like practical, like if a friend texts you, let's meet here, you always have to say, okay, call me to confirm, because you don't know who's texting you. You know, so that was the scenario that they portrayed, which was really a very scary scenario when you saw it on film. But it was really like the light bulb went off for a lot of kids in the audience. So I think that you can never really have enough of that. And I think that I know Miss Moisiades, she spends an awful lot of time building real life situations and literature and things relevant to this topic into her coursework. So I think that, you know, while they're learning their English or they're working on it.
But you know, it's definitely something you guys should be out there after, and if it's a budget issue, then you guys should be asking for it, and you know, because I mean, I went to that presentation and it blew me away, and I'm very tech savvy.
Really?
But no, it's a joke. That's another joke.
Yeah,
That's
so
a joke.
we think that it was a great success.
But
I have one more question.
sure.
Do we, as a general, what we do here, do we have people that check Facebook? Or, I mean, I'll speak for myself. I am friends with all my kids on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. Then that's the rule. And I check other friends' feeds and make sure they don't have other accounts, or at least I try.
Do you
Um,
mean routinely, or
I'm just curious, or if you
there's a situation,
Do we
there's a
do we
mechanism to check
periodically
as part of the investigation?
pick around and see what the kids are putting out there, make sure they're
Oh,
being
kids
safe?
come in and tell me what's being put out there.
But if they don't
Unfortunately,
report it,
Yeah, I mean, we don't have kind of any random, you know, hand it over, because we don't have any right to, you know, necessarily ask that of a student that we don't have any reason to believe, you know, is a part of anything. But students will come in and say, you know, am I making a big deal out of this? This makes me uncomfortable. And then we take it from there, you know. And
Yeah, we
do
don't-
call the parents
Right.
when there are, even when you're in high school, we call your parents and we tell them.
Good.
This is very much, I'm sure not everyone's paying for their own cell phones.
No, and even like things like Snapchat, the kids don't
Yes.
realize, they think that's safe, but I know how to quickly take a shot on my phone, so if somebody sends me something quick that I think is gonna disappear, I can save it. So, you know, these are things that these kids need to know. Yeah, it should delete and self-destruct in 9 seconds, but I know how to make it so it doesn't. So, you know, we need to make sure they're educated on this stuff.
She's
and-
savvy.
Absolutely.
Melissa?
Very quick final question. Do we have anything at the elementary school level at all?
Every school has something, and over the years, they've kind of rotated thing. I know last year the middle school had a parent presentation,
Yep,
very
they did.
similar to the one the elementary school has. And, you know, usually whenever we get wind of a presentation that either the PTO has put together or the schools have put together, if we can, we'll invite everybody and their brother. It doesn't have to be just because you have kids at the elementary school that you're invited. We put it out to anybody. So there is something for everybody, and I know from the staff, not just the high school, but from any of the schools, the guidance counselors are encouraged to get together and share information. So if somebody creates something at the high school, they pass it to the other people at the other schools. They take it, pull it apart, especially things like PowerPoint presentations that you could, because in many cases you want to present it in a way that's developmentally appropriate for those kids at that age. So when you're talking about middle school, sometimes it's a little different than presenting to high school seniors. So it's better if we share the information across the schools and then let the people at that school and at that age level and developmental stage craft it, change it in a way that's more approachable to those kids at that grade level. Like I wouldn't share some of these things with elementary school students. It's not appropriate, and hopefully at that age
Some
level.
of them are on Facebook.
I know, but at that point, that is why you know, the PTO is trying to get the parents aware that these are not things that you leave the kids to do unsupervised. I mean, I know you do that. My kids are grown up. I still look at their web pages and their Facebook and everything else because I agree. When they go out and start looking for jobs, if I see anything, I call them up. I say, hey, you know, somebody else could be looking at this. Just FYI, you're an adult, but, you know, I still care about you. Maybe 1,000 miles away, but, you know, you may want to look at your Facebook page. You didn't put it in there, but somebody else did. Take it down. Parents should be doing a lot more of that.
Anything else? Ladies, anything else?
Would it be appropriate for me to just ask for another 2 minutes to just go over some other
2.5 minutes.
2.5 minutes?
For being so nice.
We're going to, okay. I don't want to tie you up, but I did want to mention, because it's been a very busy week before vacation and since we've come back, that we also were able to, I know we spoke to you in the past about the Credit for Life. Thank you. Through Bay Coast Bank. So they came out on Thursday the 11th, and they were able to take the junior class. You were there. I saw you there. The junior class was in, and there was about 14 booths, and students were given a budget sheet to work off of, and they were asked to, prior to this, we had done through the counseling department Career Dimensions, which is something that we bought the license for this year through Project Action, and they were able to research their skills, aptitudes, interests, values, and come up with a career. So we allowed them to choose their own career at one group gathering, and then we moved that into this activity, the Credit for Life activity that was put on. So we had about 16 or 20 community businesses that came in to set up the booths, and students had to go around. They were given a hypothetical age of 25 years old. They were given an annual salary, a monthly salary, taxes were deducted, and they had to go to each area. So they had to go to housing, they had to go to transportation, they had to go to recreation, insurance, and they had to make sure that everything was filled out, and they kept getting sent back if they weren't within their monthly budget. So it was an eye-opener. It was a very fun activity. I think, you know, not to brag, but I think that they said that it was probably the best group of students
Okay, now
that
you're
they
bragging.
had. So I'm very proud of them. And this was coordinated, like I said, through Bay Coast with Mrs. Tutelo and Marie Fallows and Leslie Ruel. And
Great.
a lot of work went into it, and it was a great success. They made it very easy for us to offer a phenomenal service to the students. So I highly recommend it to any other school as well. And then I know that Dan Marks, when he was here, aside from inviting you to that event, told you that we were going to be having Chris Herron come speak to the students about making decisions, especially with regards to drinking alcohol and using drugs. So he came. He was here yesterday. It was a very powerful presentation. We did a 29-minute video of which was a condensed version of one of his documentaries. And then he spoke for about a half an hour, and he stayed, and what's going around now is just pictures that he took. I think one of the most exciting pieces, it's taken us a little over a year to get his schedule to coordinate where he could come because he's been in such demand. But we were able to work with Alec, and Alec actually was kind enough to transport all the 8th graders here so they could attend, because I think that it's important when we're talking about drugs and alcohol that it's never too early to get that message out. You know, and students do report that their first use is, you know, during those middle school years, you know, research-wise. So we thought it was important to bring them up, and it really felt like they were part of our school for that time. So it was just another exciting event. And then just moving forward, because I know Mr. Sullivan, in the past you've talked about doing that business connection and having businesses come into the school. We think that we did a great job and really established some nice relationships for the students with the businesses that came in. I think that they were not only interested in what the budget meant for their own life, but I think that it allowed for them to really think more about the businesses that are out there and to make those personal connections with the local businesses. So that was really a nice advantage of that activity as well. And then the only last thing to pitch here is that Project Action class is working on putting together a college fair. So I know when we spoke about this last time, Mrs. Dewart, you had indicated that maybe some alumni might want to come to the college fair and represent with their colleges. So if any of you are interested, or you know anybody who would like to come, you could certainly let me know. We've done an initial mailing, and we have 4 acceptances at this point. So we're working off a survey that we gave to the students in terms of what colleges they would like to see come, and then what colleges I would like to see come.
Carolina?
I just want to mention that the Chris Herron Speak already is on Facebook, Instagram, whatever, because I've seen
Is it real?
what is it, Project Purple?
30 seconds
What
after
it is,
you
Project
guys
Purple?
put them up.
I've seen them change their profile to Project Purple, and
The students?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I mean, so.
Because he has a
Do you know the
page,
story
too.
of Project Purple?
No, I don't, but
Next
I
week,
just noticed
next
it,
week.
and when you said Chris Herron, it was sort of, because I see the billboard going up to Boston all the time.
So,
So
I
it,
have to
it
say,
definitely touched some people.
he stayed around after his presentation. He talked with kids. He took pictures with kids. He was very, very approachable. And I definitely have to say, even talking with some of the kids,
tremendous impact.
he really, yes. So
That's
it
good.
was another very, very positive.
So there are a lot of good things going
A
on
lot of
around here
really good things
that people
have
need to know
happened.
about.
So
It's
thank
great.
you for letting us share them with you.
You owe me 3 minutes.
I know.
Thank you.
We have
If-
another
If anybody
nice
wants
program.
if anybody wants to do the college fair, who should they call? So if,
You can just email me at Emily.
so you're looking for alumni of colleges that might want to represent their alumni college school here for our
With an
college fair.
admissions person.
So if they're out there, call the school.
Thank you.
And the dearest.
And bring an admissions person, right?
Right, they
Because that's the connection we want.
Yeah.
Great. Health fair.
I won't take more than 2 minutes, how's that? The health fair.
Introduction, please.
Natalia Silva. SAD, Students Against Destructive Decisions. This health fair is an annual health fair that we hold for the students. It's always been run by SAD. Since I've been advisor and before me, we've had health fair. It teaches our students several things. I'm just their advisor. I'm there to oversee them and to help them. But I've got to say that my students do from the beginning, with meeting with Mrs. Tudelo, doing scheduling when it's convenient to hold the health fair, to sending out flyers, creating it, sending them out, making phone calls to confirm, organizing it. We meet as a group, and they do a wonderful job doing that. We concentrate on organizations that are available in the vicinity, such as Child and Family Services, the Samaritans, the Mentor Program, Women's Center, Breast Cancer. So we try to, they also met with Mrs. Medeiros to find out if there was anybody new, anybody in the organization that they could benefit from. So they contacted, these people come in, they come in year after year, some of them. They love it. I had people come to me and ask me for the principal's name because they were so happy with our students, their behavior, the way how they were polite, and they wanted to let her know so I'm very proud of my students that I work with. They're great kids, and they're all into this. I thought it was very successful. We had the whole school come in 20-minute intervals so that it's not too crowded, and we did it the first 2 periods of the day. Again, they set up the schedule with Mrs. Tudelo, and they basically run everything from A to Z. And that's basically what we do, just to give an idea to the students of what's available for services. And we had over 17 organizations
Wow.
come and present and give out things and information and such.
I got a lot of those things at home
Yeah.
on my counter.
Yeah, it's a sort of, the kids love it. They love those, somebody was giving out those wind.
The whirly gigs.
Yeah.
The whirly gigs.
Yeah,
Little,
yeah,
a
they
pink
love
breast
those.
cancer pin.
Yeah, the breast
Pin
cancer.
wheels.
Yeah.
Right, right. And so it introduced, we also had a nurse practitioner and a nurse come in. They were set separately from everybody else. They did screenings on staff that wanted to have screenings, blood pressure, BMI, cholesterol, that kind of thing. They did it right there. We signed permission slips, but that was just for the adults because, you know, how it is with students, it would take forever. And they said they'd come in to do that for the staff. So they did that. The police department was here. Kids love to do the goggles and walk the line.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's-
have any of you guys ever done that?
No.
Where you have the goggles on and it's like you're drunk and then they tell you to walk straight. It's
Right.
really.
And you can't. And it gives
Yeah,
you,
no,
it turns your
it's
stomach.
weird.
Right, and the students really enjoy it. So I hope that some of them, because sometimes it's hard to go. I mean, Mary Jo's excellent, and her doors was always for students. It was open, but sometimes students don't want to be. But if they go with a group and get the free little gift with a little name tag on it, they might call somebody in case they need help or services.
Well, we can definitely see it in your demeanor and in your face that you enjoy it, and I'm sure the kids enjoy it.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions?
I just understand that Representative Schmidt had a chance to get his annual checkup at the fair.
Yes, he did. You know, I've got to say we took the students, SAD members went up to the 84 and we went to the State House, and thank God that the MCAS, they didn't schedule it for that day. We've been unable to go because it's always on MCAS day. So they took that day in between and had this. I've got to say our students, I have a lot of sophomores in this group. They presented themselves so well in meeting with the representatives. I was so proud of these kids. The seniors, they're great. I mean, they're ready to go out there. But the sophomores, they presented so well. They invited Representative Schmidt to come down, and he actually showed up. They were thrilled. They really were. They were so happy that he came down. But they were very, very gracious, both him and Senator Rogers. They really were gracious to our kids.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for what you do. Okay. Awesome. Next on the agenda, building visits for the school committee members, and
You had asked about this, and the little feedback that I got was when individuals as a group, how many, the purpose. So
I would. It's important that we, as a committee, physically tour, walk through the schools, and really get an idea of what's out there. What a lot of times we hear things and this, that, and the other, and maybe we don't really know exactly what people are talking about. This is bad, this is worn, this is broken. So I believe it's very important that we, at a minimum once a year, and walk through the schools formally as a group together, and basically just take a good look around and at the buildings. We're not looking at staff. We're not evaluating anyone. We're looking at the buildings.
I think that's a great suggestion, and I think that we could probably rotate our meetings so that we're in a building and we could either tour it right before the meeting or right after the meeting, so that it's part of the school committee as a group as opposed to doing it individually, and schedule that on every other month or whatever. But I think that's a great idea to me.
Michael?
I absolutely see benefit with connecting the school committee with a day in the schools. I think we want to be able to visit with the schools. I don't think we're necessarily on an inspection. If we see some things, we're there to have a hands-on approach to what goes on, and it's common, and we've talked about it before. We've heard about a policy, and I think if we notify that either individually or as a group, we want to visit a school, it should be encouraged. Not that it's a inspection, you know, if we want to do an annual inspection, but I feel confident that, you know, if I want to visit a school, I'll let the superintendent know.
But I'm looking at it more in terms of, physical, looking at the physical buildings. That's my thinking with this is more of a physical. We could maybe if we took a tour soon, maybe we could find places where, where we could spend some of that money, maybe repairs, maintenance,
Empty
or
buildings, you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, my initial thinking was more of a building, bricks and mortar inspection or tour, not so much personnel or just. Sure.
As a parent that has children in 3 separate schools, and my son was in MAC, I'm pretty familiar with the buildings, and I'm not opposed to that. I just don't know that I would get a lot out of that because personally, I don't know anything about bricks and mortar, and I'm hoping and trusting that Mike Duar, when he feels that something needs to address, he should let us know and or bring it to our attention so that then we can take a look at it. I actually think that's not a bad idea, maybe bouncing school committee meetings from school to school. Sorry, Beth. Nothing.
Nothing.
Just go back
Never mind.
here and there, just so that we can see what or so that other people can see too. But I mean, I kind of know where the
Change the facade in the back.
maybe, but I mean, I think I have a good grasp on what things look like. I have no idea about fixing that. Is not my forte, so I certainly can't look at something like you can and say this needs to be fixed.
No, and yeah, and not, I'm not even, thanks for that, I understand where you're coming from. Not even so much that, why isn't this when, that's not what I
But you
mean.
also only have
It's-
children in one school, so
Yes,
you don't see the
yes,
other schools, so
yes.
that's different for you.
So yes, that's true. I guess I know one school a little bit more than the others. And, it's just, it's important to get a sense of the buildings and what it is we talk about. When we talk about the kids in
I
the
agree.
gym, it's important you visualize the gym, or when someone comes up and says, we need this, it's important that we know what these people are talking about. First, Caroline.
I also think it gives, in a tour environment, it gives the administration in the building to be able to show us their either triumphs or their woes on a school committee basis, as opposed to coming here and telling us things. It's very different. We did take a tour of the middle school, and that was a very fruitful thing. I've been in the middle school. My kids go to school there, but I've not been in all the rooms because I go there for specific reasons. So as a result, I got a lot out of that particular tour. I thought it was very helpful, and to do it on a more regularized basis. And I understand, Michelle, you do. I've been in the elementary school and the middle school as well. But there are people on the committee that
I know.
necessarily don't
I
have
agree.
kids in the building.
Then that's what I'm saying. For me, I wouldn't say that I would benefit from it, but
You went to Alyssa.
Yeah. Yes, well, I've been to all the buildings, but I
I've been
think.
to all the buildings. You've been to all the buildings?
I think it's.
I think we've all been to all the buildings.
Okay, fine, I'll do it by myself.
Well, no,
No,
wait,
I just-
could I speak?
Melissa,
Sorry.
please.
So
Sorry.
I think,
just
I
don't
think
know.
that it shows that being embedded in the schools shows us there, students get to see us, teachers get to see us. I think it's a really great public relations piece because we want to know what's going on, so it shows we care to go. I love the idea of going before the school committee meetings as a team, going in there, seeing the highlights, seeing, again, the things that may be affecting them in a different way. And then, we do that once, but then if other people want to go in separately, for different events too, I think it's important, to also do that, and I know some of us already do that. So I think as many times as we can get into those schools, the better.
So we'll talk about it, and yes, Dr.
Just a couple of thoughts. The idea of doing it before, or I would actually suggest during a school committee meeting, because that way, if you want to discuss as you walk along the hallways, you're not in violation, because if all of you show
No, I
up.
don't think you are. That
Well-
doesn't violate the open meeting law for building tours.
If you're not discussing anything about
No,
the
no.
building in terms of making
I don't think
decisions,
so.
well,
Oh, we'll check on it. We can check on it. I don't think so.
Okay. All right. So anyway, throw it out there.
That's one of them.
Update on the meeting with the FinCom and Selectman Carolina.
So, we met this, we were at the FinCom yesterday. Several of us were actually there as spectators more than anything else, with regard to the budget that the FinCom is going to have to vote on next Tuesday. And the FinCom chair, Board of Selectmen chair, and the school committee decided that we would send 2 people from each place to meet to try and see whether we could come to some consensus building around the budget. Because our budget was being portrayed as a $500,000 request, even though our request was $777,700. So there was some confusion, I think, at the FinCom with regard to why the number was this versus that. We met today. Again, it was Jack Healy, Dr. Colley, Tony Vieira, the chair of the Board of Selectmen, John Miller from the Finance Committee, and myself, to look at the numbers and to see what we could bring back to our respective boards as what we talked about, and see what the feeling of the board was as to whether we could make some agreements, make a motion, to see if there was any room for movement on both sides. What we ended up coming up with, that I told that I would present to the school committee for us to discuss, was that the town side came up with about $136,000 more or less in pullbacks from some of the line items on their side of the schedule. We had, I had said that our 695 number, which is our level services number, was basically, that's where we were. We really had no movement. The 82,000 was an additional request that we were making that we really believed we needed, but in the spirit of compromise, that I would bring to the board the suggestion that maybe we pull back that 82. In going through the budget items and looking through the different options that were being discussed, I basically said that I would bring to the board a $40,000 additional, which would bring our budget down to $655,700 as opposed to the $777,700. It would be $122,000. So it was the 82, that was the add-on, plus an additional 40. We also discussed what happens in the fall in the event that we're short, because we've got nowhere to fill that, because that's pretty much personnel monies. And there was a suggestion made by the board that the chair would comfortably recommend to the board, and John Miller said he would be able to comfortably recommend to the board, that if the schools had to come back to the town to ask for monies in the fall, that they would recommend it if at the end of this year we had a balance that we would give back. It would sort of be a good faith act that we're giving back. Like every year we turn back money anyway. Last year we turned back 60. The year before I think we turned back in the vicinity of 60 as well. So this year we're looking at a number of around 70. With and again, this is all because we have to come to our boards and the boards vote. I don't make the decision. Tony doesn't make the decision. John doesn't make the decision. So I told him I would bring those suggestions back to the board and see where we were. And I would actually like to move that the board reduce our budget requests by $122,000 and bring it to the $655,700.
Kelly, you want to wait till the action agenda when we get?
We're not at an action agenda?
No, that was the update. But now we are.
okay.
So, but
Oh, can we
All right,
discuss
fine.
that?
so yeah.
That's fine.
All right. Let's. So yeah. Anyone have any anything to add to that?
Well, I had some questions, if that would make sense
Absolutely.
now.
Yeah.
So the reduction, we have the line items that represents, or we're just gonna, in other words, looking for that, update sheet, we talked about a reduction in the FY14 budget of 120,000. Is that what you said?
122.
122. And so is that everything over the mandated line item of the?
That's the 82 plus an additional 40. I did not
The
get
82 on this?
No,
the 82 at the bottom.
It's not that low.
not this paper.
I didn't get into line item discussions because the reality is the FinCon has to come up with a number by Tuesday in order for it to be ready for town meeting. We have more
Let me just get the
time.
paper in front of me and we can look at that. Okay?
We have more time to deal with
my
where
question is,
those items are coming
Hold
from.
on, Mike.
Well, actually, I thought you would recognize me. And
126, go ahead.
so what I'm saying is, where is that going to come from? That's we need, because what you said was that the mandated level service budget is 695.7. So that means the high school music program is out, instructional supplies, in other positions.
Again, my suggestion and my intent was in the spirit of compromise so that we could get a consensus-built budget so that we could go to town meeting floor with all of us agreeing as opposed to somebody saying objection or hold. The goal was to try and reach a number that we could all live with. I could live with this number. I'm not saying
I
the school committee
understand the
can.
spirit, I'm just
Okay,
saying.
can I finish?
Well,
Can I finish?
I-
You asked a
Hold
question.
on,
I haven't
hold on.
answered your
No.
question yet. Can I finish
I don't think you
answering your
understand the
question?
question.
Like, I think the question should be directed at
Okay.
Dr. Colley. I mean,
With regard to the line
Were you in
item,
that meeting, Dr. Colley? So do you have a list of the line items that we're going to be deducting from our budget request?
It's
Other
a-
than that, we're just going to find it? I need a little more information to.
can I just finish my thought,
Well, he asked
please?
me to
Yes.
ask Dr. Colley the question because I told him you weren't directing your answer. I asked you to answer a question and you went on about compromise and spirit. I'm asking Dr. Colley to be more specific with where we're going to make these cuts. We,
Okay. You heard
that's
it.
how you have to
Tony.
do this, by a budget
Okay.
subcommittee standard at least.
I made the motion, and I want to tell you my
There is no
thought-
motion on the table, ma'am.
motion on the table.
No, you told us you had to wait for the motion.
Okay, fine, I'll make the motion again.
We're
I want to
still
tell you
d-
my thought
Slow down,
process
slow down.
behind it.
Hold on.
I understand we
She's-
have to make
Carolina
cuts.
is
I
not
just want to know
suggesting
where we're
the
making the cuts.
Okay, that's for us to decide.
That's what we're here for.
Okay,
That's what
she's
I'm
not
asking.
telling you where the
That's-
cuts are gonna
She
be.
already answered it, exactly. So I'm asking Dr. Colley if he knows where the cuts are. That's
Dr.
exactly
Colley, if
the
the
meeting.
committee was to accept a 695 number,
655.
655, I'm sorry,
700.
655, where would you recommend?
One of the reductions that I would offer up, if the report from the town administrator is accurate and correct in his calculations, one of the things he put on the table was this idea that in negotiating a new gas contract for the utilities and the cost that is associated with providing heat for the schools and the town buildings, he had come up with a number in savings on a new contract of about $30,000 to the schools. So that number would get reduced from the utility lines, and hopefully we can keep at least the summer school, because I see that as one of those impacts that hopefully will directly affect the students and make sure that they're ready for the next school year and they're not falling behind, and we can do that. So that's one piece.
Do we know quickly, do we know that 30, that utilities contract savings, potential savings, that's not in here, is that correct?
No, we haven't done that. We just found out about
I just
that
asked him.
yesterday.
Yesterday.
Oh,
He's
go ahead.
he's
So-
answered my question. Can I just ask him one question?
Let him finish, please.
Well,
Mike, just let him finish, hold your question.
So
I
there's
think I have the answer to the question.
30 out of-
I don't have any more questions. because
30
the
out
answer
of
was no, we don't
the-
have the list. We're going to work the list out now without any.
There is not a list of cuts, Mike.
Yesterday at 4 o'clock, I asked Dr. Colley if he had any suggestions in terms of recommendations or options of meeting this deficit that the town is facing? His answer was no. So at this point, we've got the gas, and yesterday we had a motion in the budget subcommittee regarding summer school, and a recommendation didn't come out of the budget subcommittee. You didn't add anything at that point about the summer school program. Is there some new information? Because I'm just trying to figure out where the list is going to end up that we're going to make the cuts. Yesterday, you didn't have any input on the summer school.
I wasn't asked to give input other than...
You were attending a meeting that a motion was to not fund summer
He
school.
wasn't there, I don't think.
Yes, he was.
I was,
You were.
and there were two competing motions, if I remember correctly. One was to keep the summer school. The other competing motion was to do away with summer school and investigate other potential programs that I don't know about out there in the world that would cost nothing to the schools. Now, both motions...
That was not the motion, sir. There was discussion about alternatives. There wasn't competing motions. There was two motions, and
Well,
you
I
had no input.
defer.
You're
I
correct.
defer
You had
to
no
the
input.
people who were running the meeting and the people who took the notes, because I wasn't taking notes.
Thank you.
You know,
Thanks for
it's
that.
my
I'll make a
recollection of
motion.
last night's meeting.
Carolina, something to add?
So my thought was that because the FinCom has a deadline, we're not under that same deadline. We have time so that we can figure out where we can move. The 30,000 was the first suggestion because that was part of the 82. I said, okay, fine, 30 comes from that gives 52. We worked it, it ended up with, there was still this $40,000 hole. And so we ended up with 92. That needs to be shifted from other places other than the utility because that was a direct shift. And so my thought process was, the FinComs has a deadline. We don't have that same deadline. We have time so that we can shift numbers and look and have information before us so that we can make better informed decisions as opposed to saying, let's just cut the music teacher, let's just cut this, let's just cut that. I'm not ready to make those decisions necessarily tonight. I think we're going to have to make cuts, obviously, to find the 92. Where exactly? I think we should allow the superintendent a little bit of time to see where he can figure out that it is the least impactful, which is what we did last year when we had to make $695,000 in cuts when the override didn't pass. So we've been here before. This is not something new for us. But we do have the time. The FinCom does not have the time because they have to go to press on their budget.
Next Tuesday.
Right.
Melissa?
Dr. Colley, do you think it's possible to look at some of the transfers that we had to make out of other accounts earlier this year to see if any of those are expenses that we might not be able, that we might not incur next year, and then in addition, if there is funding available at the end of this year? I think, Carolina, you were talking about bringing back 30, was it?
No, it was 70. If the suggestion was made that we may have a $70,000 amount that we would turn back to the town. And in the event that in the fall, we had a shortfall in our budget because we couldn't fill the personnel hole with anything, that if we came back to the town, the suggestion was that we would have commitments from FinCom and BOS that they would support our request for the additional funding, that we couldn't fill the hole.
So can we not utilize that funding for expenses that we've already budgeted for next year? They're looking for that to go back.
We can to some extent. You know, this is what Mr. Sullivan's asking, and correctly so. If we're going to reduce the budget request by X amount, where are we going to make those reductions, and what are we shifting if we can? And then after the shifting is done, if there is anything we can do, you know, you may end up with some cuts. Which one those are, I'll bring recommendations to the board, but you will be the ones to make those decisions at the end of the day. One of the ideas that got floated today, and again, we weren't there to make decisions or to bring back absolute recommendations. We're just trying to work with the Board of Selectmen, the FinCon representative, the Board of Selectmen representative, the town administrator, myself, and Carolina, just to try to come up with some ideas of where we could go to make some compromises. One of them could be, and again, this is just an idea, if you reduce, for example, the special education request by say $40,000, now that's an absolute if that kid comes and until they're in here and we're transporting and we have the contract in hand, we won't know. We're using 150 as a marker because that is similar to the cost of other students that we've sent off. So if the cost is 155 or 140 or 155, or we don't know what that cost is until the student's here. But what they're saying is if we, and I was trying to be, again, in the spirit of cooperation, if we can commit to allowing like $70,000 to go into free cash for next year, and then when the fall comes around, there's an annual town meeting in the fall, free cash, they said they would support the idea of a stopgap measure to make this budget work. We let the money go into free cash. In the fall, we take a look at how much that student will cost. And then if we have a gap, we go back to the special town meeting of the fall with the support of the FinCom and the Board of Selectmen, hopefully the school committee, and we ask for it. That's one way to make that work. That's kind of a way to, it's not guaranteed, but it's better than the option of going to town meeting with an unbalanced budget and then having to fight it out with, all the other departments. At least that's my opinion. The other way to do it is simply to make cuts now and then call it a day. And again, I can bring recommendations for that if that's what you wish. But there are mechanisms to do that. We may spend a few little things. The problem is we did take a lot of these items that are one-time costs and already spent them out. So the amount that's in next year's budget is limited. We could substitute some of that, perhaps buy some paper, but to the tune of $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. That is more difficult. So those amounts may be small, but we could do some of that. And again, I'm just looking for a little bit of time to make those recommendations, unless you want me to do it off the cuff now.
Michelle first.
That was partly my question. Have we squeezed every we talked earlier about $70,000 and buying what we can out of this year's budget for next year. Have we squeezed every last little ounce? Agenda books for next year, like all of that stuff. We need to take a good look and squeeze all of that stuff out of there.
If you take a look at the 82, both the West and the middle school are asking for additional supplies. Those perhaps are places where we can hopefully use some of this money out of this year to cover some of next. Exactly.
Shave that part off, which I think was partly what she was saying as well.
And again, that was, I think, part of the conversation at that table was, can we do some of these things and how much is that? I mean, we may be able to reduce the budget by the 40,000 additional beyond the 82, and then find ways to make it fit into next year by spending some money this year that perhaps was planned for next year. We store the stuff in a back room somewhere, but I don't know that until, one, I get the approval to transfer monies, because I know many of those lines perhaps don't have enough money to do that now. And two, I'm trying to work with the principals and with Melissa to tell me how much is there in those lines. Because at the beginning of the year, a lot of the schools go ahead and put in an encumbrance. If I have $10,000 in supply money, or I'm going to encumber $6,000 for books, $3,000 for paper, X amount for office supplies, and then as the year goes along, they pull out of that encumbrance, but they may get to May and June and not have spent it all. And that's where I need to get the principal to tell me, did you have everything you need? And if not, how much of that can you bring back? And then we delete that encumbrance and you have money.
Hold on, yes.
Well, we're having an educational course at this point on the process of budgeting. I'm trying to get to a point of selecting line items that will be part of a recommendation. And it's not to be phrased, make the cuts and call it a day. It's called come up with a responsible budget now because FinCom needs it. Call it a day.
Michael.
Either option, we can make
I didn't
adjustments
say
after
call
the.
it a day, by the way.
Yes,
No,
you
I
did.
did.
No, I didn't. I said we
You
come back.
didn't. That's correct. You did not.
Maybe you need to check your hearing, buddy.
Dr. Colley said that, ma'am. I don't know why you're jumping so much. Listen, I'm asking where we can make cuts. We're having a discussion on the budgetary process and sending money back, but we're not focusing on the same question that I started with to try to end this section. I'm ready to make a motion, and I think it makes sense. We have time to adjust it, as has been pointed out, but responsibly following the protocol is to identify where these cuts are coming from. We've got a new budgetary process that includes our evaluating all these line items. I know that the preference in the past has been, give me a bottom line item. We can't reach our stated goals by approaching it that way, so in this past year, we've changed it.
Hold on.
I don't need to hear any more about a process but I'm uncomfortable coming to an amount of our budget and not knowing how we got there.
Okay,
I
we're
know
all,
how we
okay,
can get
thank you,
there
Michael.
if I'm given the time.
Well, I think
next
we're all
time.
jumping the gun a little bit. Carolina started with an update and a suggested number and the reasons why, and that number is 655. So
700. 655, 700.
655, 700.
And I'm
she-
sure we could explain how they got to that
So
number.
if you would like to restate that motion now
Yes,
that
I make a
that we're in
motion.
the
I
budget.
make a motion that we reduce our 700 budget increase request by 122,000 and bring the request to the FinCom of a budget of 655, 700 over last year. And I don't know what that number is.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any new discussion?
Yeah, when the 655, was that today or was that last Thursday at the,
It was today.
okay, so that was after the amounts that have been added to the town budget in the past 2-3 days, because otherwise we'll still be out of balance.
We're in balance with that number,
Um,
as long as the FinCom agrees to it and as long as the FinCom agrees to all the other numbers that we played out today.
So the only question I still have then for Dr. Colley is, where can I note where these savings will come from?
Well, like I said, utilities go down by 30.
Right.
That leaves
92.
the summer school there. I would suggest that if the utilities go down by 30, we can keep the summer school by transferring the funds from utilities into the summer school. That's part
Let's not
one.
talk about where we're going to cut. So
I don't think we're
Okay.
looking for one savings to equal one cut back and forth, but yes. the
Okay, so
30 is-
30,000 would be out of utilities.
Right.
40,000 would be out of special ed. 15,000 would be out of supplies at the middle school and elementary school.
That was actual increases to their supplies, correct?
Right.
That's
That's
not-
what we're cutting
that's
back
not
on.
cutting the supply lines down to
No.
nothing.
No.
That was a request, if I remember.
Yes, and the hope is that with leftover, with monies
I would
from
like
this
to
year's
take another
budget,
look
we
at
can
that.
put it back.
all right, so
Okay?
we're
So-
getting into
So
the-
far?
we're getting into the actual cut. So
No,
before-
he's not.
No, he's not.
No, he's not.
We're at 47.
This is the stuff that was on that this was part of the
50.
777, 700.
That's what we're trying to get.
Right.
Not what I'm saying, but he's recommending where we move.
No,
But we haven't
that's
actually
not.
voted on the actual number yet.
No, that is there was a 15,000 for supplies, a 10, I think, at the middle school and 5 at the west.
That was part of the 82.
That was part of that
Okay,
777.
continue.
The other issues would be perhaps actual cuts, that perhaps until we find out, do that analysis of this year's accounts, perhaps we don't add those halftime people into the budget. So that's about, It's about 37,000, or
30 in utilities, 40 in sped, and 15 in
Supplies.
supplies.
37.
And then we don't add the part-time people into the budget.
wait a minute, 30,000, 40,000, and 15,000?
Yes.
I
So
got
you have
122.
90,000.
I have
Yes.
122.
Plus
And-
37.
Wait a minute, what's your target?
122.
122.
That's what I have, 122. 30 for utilities, 40 for special ed, 15 supplies, middle and elementary, and then 37, which was the half-time to full-time.
Yes.
Just 122.
I was at the elementary, so I was up to 90. What are the other ones that are missing?
30K for utilities, 40K for special ed, 15K for supplies, middle and elementary, 37K for part-time to full-time.
Part-time to
Moving-
full-time what?
Moving several part-timers to
There's 3
full-time.
part-time positions we
Assistant.
had. The plan was to move them to full-time.
So 127, right?
122.
122. And the rest is coming out of your salary.
You have to
That's a
identify
joke.
where you're gonna make that's what you do in budgeting. You don't just say, well, we'll do it down the road. So we're getting there. So I thought, that's what we talked about yesterday. I thought we were looking at it. So you want to call them without having line items. Is that what I'm getting from you?
We haven't actually voted on the 655. I mean,
How do
if
We don't
if
vote
it-
on a figure. We vote on a budget. We have an approved budget that's multiple
Michael,
pages.
which adds 655.7 to what? Like, we're changing the number. We're changing the number of our budget. We're reducing it by
Which
one.
Well,
I'm
we're
in
not changing it,
which
that's
I'm
what the
in
motion
favor
is.
of, but you don't, the number in the budget is made up of all the pages. That's what a budget is. I'm missing it.
Thank you. I get that.
So we're gonna not identify where the cuts are coming.
I think we just went over some of them.
Right, I'm asking if we're building up to the total or if we're not. If you're gonna
We're
call the
there.
question
We're at
without
We're at
getting.
122.
That's the total.
I mean, just right now in 10 minutes.
We're there.
It's, that can all change. I mean, that's our prerogative, Michael. Melissa, please.
I just wanted to say, I think given the quick deadline that we're dealt with the FinCom, I think this is really great that we're able to come to at least these figures. I think this, I'm glad to see it. My question is, and I'm sorry, I know you've already answered this, but if we identify expenses that can be used next year for that 70,000, so that we can potentially save some of these items here, this may be more so for Carolyn, can we still utilize that, or we don't have to turn it back, or, with this motion, would we still have to turn back that 70K figure?
My feeling on this motion is that we're reducing the figure by the 122, and then we asked Dr. Colley to go back to the table and see where we actually want to put the 122. 30 of it already came out of utility, so we're only looking for 92.
Yeah.
He's suggesting 40 for sped because there seems to be a commitment that if we're short in our sped budget, we can go back to town and they'll support us. So now we're down to, how much is that?
Well,
70 minus 122 is
50.
52.
I understand all that. I think my question just is at the end of this, we go back and, if this motion passes,
Mhm.
can we still go back and look at the 70K that we have remaining to see if we can?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Or any other funds that are left.
It's our prerogative, Melissa.
Thank you.
Carolyn, Michelle first, Michael.
I actually have to say, I'll be honest with you, I am, first of all, what is the number again, because I don't have the packet in front of me, for a level service budget?
695.
695.
So this 655 brings us below a level service budget.
40,000 below.
Yes.
These things that you've identified are all things that, and I get it, yet again, we're looking at cutting things that make our district better. These things are all things that are going to, with perhaps the exception of obviously the special ed and perhaps the supplies, they're going to make our district better. you know, I'm not, and I realize that's not what we're doing, and perhaps we could find that money down the road. I get that, but I mean, we're not even talking a level service number at this point.
Michael?
And that's my concern. I appreciate you now alluding to the fact that, yes, the motion's going to include some cuts, whether they're the final budget. We're going to look at it again and again, but that's what we're delivering out. I'm uncomfortable with that because we've identified classroom-specific, and I think that goes along with what Michelle was saying, classroom-specific expenses. The elementary school asked for supplies because they needed them. I'm not in favor of cutting those supplies. I am in favor of some other cuts. So that's what I asked to discuss about.
Again, that's our
the
prerogative.
SPED funding,
That's our prerogative.
we've already trimmed. I know it's our prerogative, and it's my prerogative to.
No, I'm saying we don't have to decide
Well-
those exact cuts tonight, is what I'm asking, is what I'm saying.
Well, I would like to. We're debating them now, and I don't see classroom supplies should be eliminated versus
We'll
a
just add them
very
into the
small
budget
portion
this
of our.
year. Yeah, you're
A
right, I
very
agree.
small portion of our technology budget could be reduced by 15 and we wouldn't even notice it. The classroom's up and running as soon as they get in it. By the end of our technology expenditures, maybe we'll find some other funding. Some, you know, when we get into half year, now we have this funding and it can go into that technology plan that I'm not saying that, and or some other larger areas. Expenses is important for the classroom.
Dr. Collins?
Well,
Michelle?
Supplies.
number one, I did not identify summer school because I agree with you. That's one of those areas that the principals have been asking for a few years. It's very much needed. I do want to point out that we weren't the only ones wrestling with this at the table. They talked about the police, the assessors, their own savings on the on gas coming our way, to reduce the whole balance of the budget. Snow and ice, Board of Selectmen, the $20,000 they had for surplus. So they're working on it as well. And I agree that, conceptually, what we're trying to get is at a number that balances the budget, that the FinCom can present to the taxpayers. But as we go through this, perhaps, at the next meeting, when I have better numbers for all the expenditure, if there are any surpluses, that we could perhaps, as Mr. Sullivan says, perhaps we leave the, the supply lines intact, and we put money towards technology now, and use some of that money, and hopefully Beth can, make do with whatever we get now for next year, and if it's not enough, hopefully maybe there'll be some money next year. If not, well, then she doesn't do it. But I think the exercise is more, what can we present to the FinCom that they can work with, that the Board of Selectmen can work with, that we can work with. Obviously, if they were able to provide us with $30,000 in savings because they wrote a good contract, I appreciate it. Saves us from having to make that cut ourselves. But
Okay, so
I think there's things we can do between now and June.
We've already
Michelle,
said
and
we're
then
going to
we're
make the
gonna
cuts.
vote.
It's
Michelle,
there.
Michelle,
We
and
don't
then
need to
we're
hear
gonna
a
Michelle, and then we're going to vote.
I guess my issue with the process, and in many ways I agree with Michael on the way that this is happening. I feel like I need to have a sense of what we're looking at for potential cuts or places that we're looking about getting this money from to feel comfortable with a number. Just sort of dropping by 122 and saying, well, this is now our new budget, and not really having an idea of where we're looking, and then only, last year we had numerous ways where we could pull money. Here, this is 4 things that we're talking about that we're making the district better in some ways. So that's my issue with the process, which I actually agree with Michael on.
Can I make
Ready to
some
make a motion?
suggestion or ideas?
We have a motion in a second. Yes, Michael.
One of the things that we can do, based on at least those 3 areas that we talked about, perhaps making improvements, the halftime positions moving up, we could make a decision to cut out the supervisor positions and shift money there. That's what I'm saying. Between now and June, we can come up with a list of options, run them by the administration, see what they think is the best approach to their building and what they need, and then come back and say, here's 3 options to get to that number. I'm just right now, because I was asked, you know, we left that meeting at 5:30. I'm being
Okay,
asked
so-
to come up with some recommendations, and I did. But that's short time to think about it. Here's what I came to the table with. You give me more time, I'll come up with more options that you can consider.
Something new, please.
Yeah, no, I was just looking, we had a whole budget process here, and I was looking for the prioritized list for, because I know it was color-coded, if, and.
That was way back, yeah.
Well,
Yeah, but
that's
that's
why
the
you
same
do
list.
that.
Yeah,
You do
no,
that
I know, no,
Before,
I
so
know.
you can
No,
refer
that's-
to the list of, in terms of prioritizing. So we've done all that. As I said, I'm ready to make a motion if one's on the table. There is one on the table?
Motion and a second, yes, so.
And it includes these items, or?
No,
It's just
the number.
655.57.
We're just voting on the number. We can wrestle with the cuts and, you know, later.
Well, again, I don't think you can, I don't think legally you should do that, but.
What was the level service number again?
Come up with an amount.
695.
We could have done that at the beginning of the budget process, right?
I'm sorry, what do you mean? Mike?
Just come up with a number. I mean, I think we need to
Michael, I
do
agree
it,
with,
follow
Mike,
the budgetary tonight. And it's not, I'm ready to make a motion that would do that if this one passes, I guess.
let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
I'd like to make a motion. Yes? I'd like to make a motion that
Did you
those
vote no?
line
No,
up,
hold on, Michael.
Did you
Four
vote no?
four
I
yeas
vote
and
aye.
1 no.
I was gonna say,
sorry,
Go ahead, Michael.
sorry, Mickey.
it passed.
My
I couldn't
motion is
answer.
to address the reduction in our FY14 budget by specifically the $30,000 in savings utilities, so reducing utility expenses. The part-time, no, because that's, the part-time to full-time.
Can I suggest we do it one at a time?
37,000, is that what that amount is?
Yep.
Yes.
And $40,000 in technology and 15,000 in administrative.
It was 40 for special ed.
No, he's
No, that-
making.
this is
Are you
his
making
own
your
list.
own
This is a
list?
separate
I'm not
motion.
touching
Oh,
special
you're going on
ed.
a different list, okay.
Yeah, he's
Separate
making his
motion.
own list.
Well, because the other motion didn't have amounts, right?
That's right.
Right.
Wasn't specific, yes.
All right, so my motion is, once again, 30 utilities, 37 part-time to full-time. What position was, in other words, that's gonna stay at
That was 3 different
part-time,
positions, yeah.
staying
It
at
was
part-time.
three
was three.
positions.
That's 3 positions, Mike.
Right. And $40,000 reduction in the technology department, and
You're at 107.
15,000 in superintendent administrative department.
Is there a second? Hearing none, okay.
Tony, I want to make a motion. I move that we charge the superintendent with coming up at our next school committee meeting, a list of suggested places where we can fill these gaps and transfer and shift so that they have the least impact on the classroom.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? I'm sorry, Melissa, I'm sorry.
So is that would be obviously taking into account anything that you can obviously spend this current year.
And of course, the members are more than welcome to let the superintendent know where they think things should happen. Mr. Sullivan?
Yeah, and that's the intent of my first motion. Again, I would ask anyone else to come forward with a motion that would bring this to rest. We have an amount we have to cut. We knew this was coming down the pike. As we knew when we were at 1.2 million, we had to make some reductions. We've looked at this. We have a sense. We all have a different sense. We as a school committee get together and make a budget decision. This is what we're here for, okay? We make the budget decisions. We're being faced with a cut. Every one of us, including the newest member, because she's been here for the whole process as well, know what our budget looks like. We have to make decisions. Right.
Thanks, Mike. Yes, so all I'll say is Dr. Colley will submit his suggestions, and then it will be the committee's job to yay or nay them, or make our own. So all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Opposed?
Thank you.
Can I ask a question before we move off
Sure.
of this topic? As I was looking at the calendar, I know FinCom's got to have their meeting next week.
Tuesday.
Right. But then if you look at the week after, it's the week that we're scheduled to have a school committee meeting on the 8th. That will probably, I mean, I don't know how long this town meeting will go, depending on how contentious it is. But it may go into the second night, which would be Wednesday the 8th. So a question would be, since we're looking at the next couple of weeks, do you want to meet that Wednesday? Make it earlier than town meeting time? Do you want to say we're going to meet anyway? Or do you want to meet before town meeting on the day previous? We've done that in the past.
My suggestion would be that we schedule it. In recent history, town meeting have not gone to day 2 and 3, and if it happens, we can cancel and schedule it for the next week. We have time to do that.
Anybody else have any thoughts on that?
My thought is of extreme concern. We're heading towards the end of the year when we have a lot of work to do. Why don't we just schedule it for Thursday if all of us can make it that day? I mean, otherwise we have to post it. We lose a week.
Melissa?
So, two things. One, can we schedule an alternative day where if there's a town meeting, then it'll already be posted? I don't know if that's possible. And then two, and it was something I was going to ask in new business, and I don't know if I saved it to then. I was going to ask about meeting during the summertime, because I know that that's not on our schedule, but
Actually,
new business?
sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk, yeah. Good. But the suggestion of
That does
posting
happen.
a rain date is,
A town meeting day.
We don't get
The
summers off.
Okay.
but yeah, right? I mean, that's, we could do that, Dr. Colley? If the members are all...
That's why I figure I bring it up now, because otherwise we won't have a chance to discuss it unless we do it through
I mean,
emails.
none of us can guess how it's going to go on Tuesday.
I don't want to
but-
guess. So, what would your preference be?
Does anybody have any problems with
I
Thursday?
actually have
I
a big
do.
problem with the whole week. Sorry. My daughter, her opening night is actually the Thursday.
So do we want to meet earlier before
Well, we
the
have to
meeting?
meet before town meeting, because right now we don't have a budget to present. We've got a number. So we need to meet before town meeting. We need to approve whatever these suggestions you're going to come up with. We can't go through a town budget and say, but it's off by 122, we don't know where we're going to put it. We need to approve that. That's
No,
what we do.
No, we can actually do that. We just need a number. We can do that, Michael. Town can't do that.
Correct. In a school committee meeting that we should have before town meeting looks at our budget. What do you?
The number, Mike, we just,
Town meeting just approves the number, they don't approve our budget. They
That's not
approve
correct.
the number. They don't approve our line items. They approve a number, and then we
Okay, so we're
decide
gonna
where
make
the
a
numbers go.
presentation that says we don't know how we came to this number. We need to meet before town meeting, and I don't think we have, we're scheduling one, our next meeting is after town meeting, is what you
it's
suggest.
Wednesday, yeah.
So-
It's just that's when it falls on this.
We need to meet before
First
town meeting and-
Tuesday
and get
of
any
Wednesday.
recommendations from
Second
you so
Wednesday.
we can complete the budget process. Because that's the last time we vote on it, unless there's transfers.
Melissa?
My thoughts are we going to have are you going to be able to have an accurate number in regards to what could potentially be available prior to that? And if not,
I had already scheduled Melissa to, before town meeting was even thought about. I had already scheduled Melissa to give me a number, because we need to plan these things way in advance. So Melissa, for the first school committee meeting in May, I need to know how much money we think we have in all the different lines that perhaps have a surplus. Because I don't want to go to school committee in June. I don't want to wait till then. If we can tell the principals, hey, how much of this are you really going to need? I'd like to get some kind of a number. So she was already working on this. She will have it ready by then. Again, it's...
Those are the FY13. I'm talking about FY14 you need to sign off on. Those numbers are for the FY13 transfer?
Yes,
So it's-
but
so we
as
have-
Melissa
Which-
pointed out, some of that FY13 may be used to identify which areas of the FY14 can be
We
reduced.
have enough information
And-
to make this decision.
And if I may,
I'm sorry.
But you don't do it that way usually.
Dr. Collins.
It's reverse.
if I may, just a suggestion, the school committee could meet, come up with a list of ideas, put them into the budget as it usually people see it, with all the 30, 40, 50 pages of the budget. And after town meeting, when the amount is certified and allocated to the schools, school committee could go back potentially, because that is, what the school committee is allowed to do. And you can move lines around and move the monies into other areas if you kind of have a second thought and say, geez, we really didn't want to cut perhaps one of those positions. Perhaps we should cut this other thing over here. You can make those transfers even before the year opens. It's your budget, so you have the ability to move lines around.
Is everybody okay with a Monday meeting?
The 6th? No, you're not okay that way.
No,
She
the
could-
Thursday, I can do the Monday through Wednesday. The Thursday is
Monday,
opening
Michael.
night, so I'm not gonna miss opening
Whatever's the
night.
best day.
Melissa, Monday?
You can't present a budget if you haven't signed off on it. We've just adjusted it, but we don't know where. We are signing off on every line
I
item.
can do
So we'll
Monday.
post a meeting for Monday, May 6th.
6th. So the posting will go out on Thursday the 2nd.
So we'll just need to remind ourselves to get the posting done on time.
Right.
And we are not meeting on Wednesday.
We'll
We're
do-
not, are we adding an additional meeting, or
No,
are
no,
we?
no, no.
This is just a sign up, yeah.
I'm
This-
just checking,
I
I'm
thought-
just
No,
checking
not
on my
on the-
calendar, that's all, don't jump on me.
No, I was saying I'd like to make a motion after this discussion, but I want to know if you're not.
We don't need a motion, do we?
Yes. At this point, because.
You should,
I-
in
I-
particular,
I-
if you're changing the night of a scheduled
Sure.
meeting, which you voted
Is that your
on.
motion, Mr.
My motion is the specifics for why we're getting together,
Okay.
okay? And to answer your question, we can't have this meeting if we don't get some suggestions from Dr. Colley. You can send us this with an email,
I
once
will.
you've come up with your list well
Mhm.
before, and maybe some options. And then we come in and sign off on our budget.
That's the plan.
It's not just the bottom line
Mhm.
amount. And if it's Monday, I don't really have a preference, but if someone would rather have the full meeting on a Wednesday and just come in and deal with that one issue, that's what I would I think I would rather do that
Well,
on.
we can make it a
What's that mean?
small.
A small
not
agenda.
pack too much stuff into it
Oh,
if it's
I-
an issue, I'm saying.
When nobody's looking at you and go, "Psh," that doesn't,
Yes, Carolina.
I'd like to move that we move the meeting of May 8th to May 6th.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Any new discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
I'll post that on the website as well, so people know.
Okay, pizza at school committee, oh, no, never mind.
Yes, we can have those as long as you're paying.
All right,
for them.
so, and I think our discussion took care of the, well, that, we just did that, right? Annual town meeting strategy
Yeah.
and school committee meeting for the 8th, so that's what we just did. All right, so it's 8:10, Dr. Colley, and superintendent's formative assessment, mid-cycle review.
At the last school committee meeting, I presented, based on the timeline that we came to for having the superintendent present evidence of progress towards goal completion. At the beginning of April, the red folder and the blue one are both goals and evidence of work that I have done over the course of the year. That also applies to the rubric that the state's put together for superintendents. I gave you all the opportunity to have it also on email. We scanned it, sent it to you. What I gave you today is reminders, because I believe most of you have seen these. There's one piece I think we saw at a prior meeting before Mrs. Pacheco took office. So I'll make this one aware for you as well. It was put together by the MASC. So I'll give you a copy of that. But the other thing I gave you is a formative assessment report template, similar to what we use with the other administrators and teachers, which basically have a space where you, on each of the standards of the rubric, would put in any comments based on the the evidence provided. You'd say, yes, he's done this. No, he's not done that. He wants, I want him to do more of this, less of that. And then at each standard, you would basically make a statement, in this area, we think he's exemplary, proficient, needs improvement, unsatisfactory. That's what the rubric is about. So you have 4 standards there. And then on the back, you have, we agreed on 6 goals. I provided some evidence on where the goals are at this point. Again, you put in goal 1 was this one. Here is my comments on that goal based on the evidence provided. It's on target, it's not on target, or it wasn't evaluated at this point, or not applicable. So it's just a form that I can send to you in, a Word document that you can, type into if you want. But the question is, or the question was, it's a new form, it's a fairly new process. How does this school committee want to proceed? In the past, it's been, we used to use a different form. Everybody filled it out, brought it to the chair. Chair made one form into like a composite.
Actually, no. Karen did it.
Yeah, she turned them over to Karen.
Okay, so I wasn't part of that. I didn't know what Karen did.
Karen did them so that none of us were compiling them.
Okay, so if you want to follow the same process with what's now like a mid-cycle formative evaluation, and then at the end of September, beginning of October, when the MCAS are out, you can do the other one, which is a little bit more extensive, which is the summative evaluation, which is kind of like the end of the year. So this is just a mid-cycle.
Michael,
What do you guys think?
Carolina?
Give feedback.
Sure.
The latest guidebook that the state's put out on superintendent evaluation is dated September 12th, 2012. And that has, the rubric's certainly a part of it, but I think that'll walk us through the approach that we should be using. What I thought this was on for tonight was, now that, as you mentioned, we've had an opportunity to look at this, there's a cover letter that you sent to us.
Yeah,
With
that
it,
was
and it
part
has
of,
some-
that's part of the documents
No,
and the
I
evidence.
understand that. I thought that this meeting was to discuss what you've given us. We didn't have an opportunity to discuss what you handed to us, so you want us to do that through a formal paper process.
That's usually how it's done. I mean, you
Usually
can obviously...
in terms of the new evaluation process that just started this year?
Yeah.
So a lot of other people have already gone through it, and they're going through with the paper?
Other superintendents that I've spoken to, yes, have done it this way, and yeah, the school committee will discuss the evidence if they so choose, but usually they do some kind of a paper feedback form to the
Right, 'cause
superintendent.
I mean, there's some information in it that is confusing to me. We found out through the letter that we got on April 18th,
I thought it was earlier, but...
it is dated the 5th, but we found out that we're not doing administrators' evaluations, if I understood the letter correct. Administrator formative evaluations are not being scheduled, is that correct?
They have been.
Okay, then I have to get the letter. You don't have a copy of that.
It's in the...
It's in the minutes from last meeting.
It's in there as well. It's in the red folder.
All right, but
No, I have it right here. Oh, it's right there in the front. So my question is, because what you said is that we're postponing some of this process. Yeah, please.
so while Michael looks through
No,
that,
I've read it 100 times.
Okay, so-
Because of these state delays and complications, we've not moved ahead in a consistent development of midterm and end-of-course assessments at the middle school.
Mm-hmm.
But we're still, that's the data that you, so is that not postponing the mid-cycle evaluations?
No. What it is there's a goal that I put forward that basically said that we would help the middle school create both midterm and end-of-the-year exams. However, part of the reason for that goal was because the state, in their original plan for this new evaluation system, wanted school districts to create at least 2 forms of assessments for every grade level and every discipline. However, they said that they would provide guidance as to what those should look like, because they're now just coming out with that guidance. We did not move ahead with that goal because it would be like trying to create a course.
No, I
that
understand,
then
that's
the
why I'm asking.
All right, let
what-
him finish.
Well, he's finishing something that
Michael, please.
I don't need to, I have.
I
been-
need to hear it.
But
Thank
my
you.
question is very specific. You answer the question, then I don't want to go into using up all the time and then tell me I talk so much. Are we doing all other administrators mid-cycle? Was my
Mr. Sullivan,
question, because I took it from this that because the assessments
well, Mr.
weren't-
Sullivan, if you had a question about that, it's been around, and you could have asked me that question, and I would have answered it. As you know, oh, she's still here. Mrs. Dargan, Dr. Dargan, was tasked with doing a lot of the evaluations,
I
so
read
she
this
does the
week. It came
principals, the
to us last
principals,
week.
so the assistant principals. I do the
Right.
central office staff. So, yeah. I don't know what that has to do with what I put in the
I
letter.
just have one question. Yes, we are, or no, we're not doing other administrators mid-cycle evaluations.
Mrs. Dunn, thank
Okay,
you.
They're
that was
done.
the question. So my
Thank
next
you.
question is,
Oh, one question you said.
no, I didn't say that. I said he takes forever to answer it.
Go ahead.
My question is, your goals, though, are tied to the assessments, theirs apparently are not. Because the cover letter, which I would invite, I guess it talks about why we can't do things through this process. And it blames the state for it. So when I contacted the state, I don't know what that has to do with your evaluation. I don't know why you brought that into this.
Thanks, Mike, for bringing that to light.
I still haven't gotten the answer to my question. And I thought today we were going to talk about the adjustment to the goals, because that's also what you suggested in the letter. But I didn't know, I guess that has to be done through paper process. Is that?
Dr. Colley, may I?
Yes.
Michael. Dr. Colley put this together
Right, and it says the state is
We as
making
a
it way
committee-
too
hold on,
complicated.
the whole-
I
we
called
need
the
to
state
look-
and they
we
said that's
need-
not correct.
Michael, we need to look at that, and we should have all been looking at it. At our next meeting,
We have all looked at it. That's why
Okay.
it's on the agenda, I assume.
okay, all right. So he's given this, so is this the form that we want to use,
No.
or how we want to do it? Well, that's what I think we need to discuss here, is
We want to
how
discuss
do we
the
want to
fact
do
that
this?
he's,
Michael,
th-
I would suggest we fill this form out at our next meeting and turn it in. It's a midterm. You can make your comments on, we can all make our comments on, is he on target? Do we need to change course? Do we need to focus more here, more there? When we fill this out, Michael, next week, at our next meeting. All your questions, Michael, you can certainly
no.
make that part of your evaluation.
Well, I think you should read this a couple more times, because it says that the state is causing all these complications, and it's basically suggesting that we need to revise the goals, and I was just trying to ask some questions about it, because it doesn't make a lot of sense to,
So if it pleases the
the
committee,
DESC.
I would suggest we use this mid-cycle formative assessment report. It is a midterm, it's not, we don't have to do that 50,000 page assessment. It's a course correction. We've all looked at that information. Continue to look at it. Questions, comments, call the superintendent, ask him.
A motion to approve the mid-cycle formative assessment report as the form we use to evaluate the superintendent for the mid-cycle.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any new discussion?
I thought it was on the agenda to talk about, not to approve a form. I guess I was wrong. We're here to approve a form, okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Use whatever forms you want. I mean, that's the form we're supposed to use, so it's a good idea to approve it, but that's what we said last time it was given to us, that was the state
Okay.
form.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan.
I thought this
For
was
bringing
on the
this to
agenda
light.
to discuss it.
Michael, what's your vote? She doesn't know what your vote is.
No. Sorry. So then I should change this to say, we're not, it's the form is the only thing we're gonna talk about tonight.
Why, it's the whole thing, Michael.
Well, that's,
We gotta, let's move on.
so we're not talking about it tonight.
How are we going to deal with this information,
Okay,
Michael?
that's-
We all have the information. We've all been looking at it. We're not going to do this tonight. We're not going to fill out this mid-cycle assessment report tonight.
I would Right, because we had to approve it first.
Well, I mean, we
I get
didn't, we
it.
had no, yeah, we,
I get it.
thank you, sir. Routine matters. Approval of minutes of Wednesday, March 27th, 2013. Is there a motion? Look at the wrong ones.
I'll make a motion to approve the meetings minutes from Wednesday, April 10th, 2013.
Is there a second? I'll second. Any discussion?
You know, the presentation of this was noted on those minutes, correct? No,
I
that
think we
wasn't that
tabled
date,
it.
was it?
I think we tabled it.
No, we let it
Section
spoke.
4. D.
For what?
4D. like second or third.
Yes.
All right, I just,
Okay. Any,
it didn't say,
all in favor?
no, my question was, it's there.
Yes.
Anything about?
Dr. Colley spoke quickly about the amount of evidence needed to show how things are going and the rubric used for educators, the red binder available for school committee members to review has all the evidence. The blue binder demonstrates all the goals. Dr. Colley invited all the members to view the binder, and we asked for it to get put online, and it did.
Okay, and the date of those minutes was?
April 10th.
March.
April 10th. I think that's
I'm
what I
sorry,
wanted to
red
point
binder.
out.
So
I think the agenda had the wrong date.
The agenda had
Well,
it
that's
wrong.
what I-
That's what I thought, because that messed
That's
me
what I'm
up.
trying to, you know.
So let's fix
I
that.
was trying to figure out how we,
So perhaps you
Looked at
may
something
want to
before it came out.
withdraw the.
So I would
The
withdraw
motion.
my motion with the wrong date, and it's the minutes from,
Oh,
It
it
says
is.
April 10th on it.
The minutes say April 10th. The agenda said April 27th.
No, it doesn't. No. Approval of minutes
Yes, it
of
does.
no,
Wednesday,
the agenda
April
says,
10th.
I'm
Well, maybe
looking at
it's-
it, it says
Or
April 10th.
maybe I'm looking
no, on here
at
it says
different
March
agenda.
27th.
Where?
What
Mine
does
says
it say?
April
No, it's
10th.
a paper.
so
hard
it
copy.
the
was
paper.
fixed.
Okay.
Oh,
online.
she fixed it. That's good.
Well, this is
Okay.
fixed
So
So
online.
but I read it, I read the 26th.
It's
Okay.
fixed.
Okay.
Is yours
That's
printed from
all I
online?
wanted to make sure.
No,
Oh, this
my
is the-
packet.
Oops. It's okay. So it
April
is-
10th minutes.
Yes.
I will
I said
second.
April
that.
10th.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 School committee business. That was really more mask stuff for that May 4th extravaganza. And new business requests.
Let's see.
Melissa, do you have something for us?
I do have a few, but, on this Saturday, the charting the course. This Saturday is charting the course, the, seminar that new school committee members need to attend. And I wanted to seek approval for going to that course for this, weekend.
Motion to approve Melissa
Second.
Pacheco's attendance
All in
at the
favor?
mass training
Aye.
program.
Aye.
All right, there's a form you'll have to fill out.
Yeah,
Okay.
make sure you dot all the i's and
So it's a form.
all that good stuff. You could see, you could check with Mickey on that. Anything else, new business?
Yes. So for the agenda next week, or maybe in the weeks to come, there are a few things that I wanted to put on the agenda. One was our school committee summer meetings, and I know Michelle indicated that we have meetings, but when I looked on the schedule, there were a couple months that we didn't have anything. So I wanted to put that on the agenda to talk about. And then also the middle school, I wanted to talk about the middle school and what's going to happen at the start of next year. And then also summer school. I know it's in the budget for next year, but that was something that was talked about in the budget subcommittee meeting, and I'd just like some more information about it. If we've looked at other models, I know Mr. Sullivan indicated that he wanted to look, and I don't know.
Discuss it, just, okay.
Okay, sorry, thank you. That's it.
Yeah, and in conjunction with the middle school, school buildings as a whole,
And
not just the middle school, all of the buildings.
Dr. Colley, I just remembered the report. I thought that was
That
going
was
to be
on tonight.
available this week.
Didn't get cut out.
Probably later this week. He said the 26th, which would be the end of.
Because we had, okay.
Can I just add?
So if it came back, I was going to put it on the next
new business
agenda.
that Melissa suggested on the summer school not be pushed beyond our next meeting,
Okay.
so that, because that may make budget sort of decisions based on what info you get on that too.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Any other new business?
Yeah, you skipped over me.
I'm sorry, Michael, but I
Oh.
didn't skip over. I was saving the best
So
for last.
we've got the to identify the cuts from the budget at the next meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Just a reminder on that. I would like, I'll be distributing to everyone the copy of the this the PDF? Yeah. The September 2012 Guide for School Committee, School Council, and Parents, titled Evaluating the Superintendent under the New Massachusetts Educator Evaluation Systems. I think that's a comprehensive guide. It's the most recent, and rather than the pieces, I want to have the discussion of this, because it talks about cycles. We haven't talked about the 5 cycles, and I think we need to...
Are we talking about it now, or are we going
Can't
to talk
wait.
about it next time?
Can't wait. Okay, comments and statements from the public.
Wait.
Melissa, one more.
It's just about the cable. I don't know what's going on with our cable station. We've been rerunning the same meeting.
And it's a
over-
very old one.
Yeah.
We figure out there's a glitch in the way the thing was put in.
So
We fixed it already.
We fixed it, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I do have one question. So for school committee, just trying to get this straight,
Monday.
new business, you're gonna have the budget, you're gonna have summer school, you wanna bring up the superintendent's evaluation. I would like to bring in
Well, that was a given, I thought, for next meeting.
well, that's what I'm saying. I'm just trying to figure out what's gonna be on the agenda. And I would like to bring in the district determined measures information as it comes out from the state, so that you're up to date with what they're doing and what we have been doing in response.
I see someone from the public.
I just wanted to address the cable issue. I do apologize. We forgot to switch out the DVD, but beyond that, the sort of incessant looping is due to a $14,000 piece of equipment that had an untimely death somewhere in October. And because of that, we literally have a borrowed old DVD player from the town. I put the request in for cable funds. I think that's going to happen, but it's just been a very slow process. I was just talking to the other Mr. Sullivan about that tonight. So the town has the money. I'm not sure what the holdup is, because they have like over $300,000 in that cable fund.
Thank you. Madam Public. Okay. All right, and so
Motion?
I believe
just-
motion to,
The reason I'm sending everyone this guide is because you have not received it, and it's going to give you the instructions and discuss what you're now, I didn't know we were doing that next week, the paper evaluation.
okay.
Motion to
So we
adjourn?
So-
look forward to that.
Yeah, but we're also doing the evaluation the same night we're going to try to tackle this budget. We're doing a budget and a superintendent evaluation on the same.
A midterm assessment. It's not going to be, this isn't,
It's a
year-end.
midterm evaluation or
You know.
assessment, correct.
Course adjustment.
I don't think we should do that on the same night that we're doing a budget.
If we get too crazy, we'll
Well,
table something.
It's been there a few times, but I think we should go by this complete, concise procedure
And
and
send that to the members.
go through the other
Motion to
cycles that
adjourn?
have
Motion,
not,
we have a-
there's been some cycles missed.
I got a second. All in favor?
Aye.